From the studio that has won no awards whatsoever comes the podcast that should have already been canceled. Welcome to another episode of Have You Read This? A podcast for bookworms, lovers of sarcasm, and those dangerously close to overdosing on caffeine. Load up on ibuprofen, because here comes 15 minutes of your life you'll never be able to get back.
Okay, for the four of you that still tune in looking for new episodes, I know what you're thinking. Where have you been? Did you stop making episodes? Thank you for the people that have emailed me and said, hey, we appreciate your silence. It'd be great if you didn't make any more episodes. But I want to issue my apologies for going all Mitch McConnell on you. The truth is, the summer, it's just busy around here. And I say this every time. One day, I actually will get around to banking a few episodes so that I can actually keep up with something that resembles a schedule. Anyway, consider this episode my proof of life, which will hopefully be just a tad bit better than the photos Mitch McConnell's office has been sharing. Anyway, I found Erik Fox via TikTok, and if my memory serves me, something that it rarely does, he made a video where his wife had encouraged him to talk about his writing more online. Now, I could be wrong, probably am, but anyway, just roll with it because I think that sounds way cooler. He was pushing a new novel as an independent author, which was a crime thriller titled Monarch. His official bio says that he's a fan of horror, psychological thrillers, and that he's excited to step into the genres and bring his own flair to the pages in his debut novel Monarch, which is a page-turning serial killer story that pushes the boundaries of what's possible and shows that even the best of us can have a dark side. And all of that sounded pretty great to me, and I think whatever it was about his video, an independent author, and him trying to get his name out. Instantly, I got on Amazon, grabbed a copy. Monarch follows a detective, comes across a crime scene that is only best described as horrific. Maybe not necessarily Conor McGregor's return to MMA horrific, but it's close. Like, the victim was pretty much dissected and placed in such a way that if you were actually there, I would imagine you wanting to vomit at what you saw. And you know what? All great killers have nicknames, and in this story, it's no different. So the Monarch killer is running loose, and there's only one detective skilled enough to capture him. And I got to say, I had fun with this book, and I've been trying to wrap my head around how would I relate this to somebody who hasn't read it? Because this one really isn't what I would say is a traditional detective murder mystery type story. Actually, not by a long shot. There are several twists and turns, which kept this thing moving for me. But like when I normally try to explain a book to someone, what I usually try to do is find something similar that they might have read or that they knew about, and I could kind of use that as a reference. For example, if you really enjoyed reading Twilight, then you would probably also love the DSM-5. But Monarch, in my humble and oftentimes correct opinion, stands on its own as something that I don't think that I've read before. So it was really hard to relate it to like, oh, if you like this book, then you'll love Monarch. The best way to convey the vibe of this story, though, I think is with movie references. If you take elements from Seven, Silence of the Lambs, and I would say a touch of Fight Club, I think you may get a better perspective here. And I also wanted to point out the amount of gore and violence. Fox doesn't go over the top with the details. I think what he gives you is just enough for you to get the point of just what a deranged, psychotic person this killer is. And also, at the same time, he holds back enough so it doesn't go completely off the rails. Like he could venture all the way into splatterpunk, but he doesn't. He holds it back, which I thought was a nice touch here on his part. And before I wrote my review online, I do what I always do, unfortunately. And I made the mistake of reading what others on Goodreads have written. It's hard for me to ignore that. I'm just curious. Like when I get done reading a book and I'm like, oh man, that was awesome. I feel like sometimes I go to the reviews and the very first person was like, this was a 1-star read. This person should be executed by firing squad. And I'm like, whoa, calm down. Like, why are you so angry? But I was surprised, honestly, at the readers who had an issue with the main character, like specifically the dialogue. So Fox likes to use this where X is what I think, Y is what I say. And he uses that pretty frequently. And for some reason, this ticked off some people. And I was trying to imagine the people that are upset over this enough to write 3 paragraphs about it on Goodreads are probably presidents of their local HOA and go around the subdivision with rulers measuring the height of everyone's lawn and making sure the mailbox is the appropriate shade of black. Personally, I loved how he used that kind of dialogue, and I think it felt like it brought me closer to the characters. I mean, how else are you going to get into the head of the main character without showing their personality and their habits, things that are repeated? I just don't see how you can do it without that. And so for me, it was a nice touch, and it brought out even the dry humor and sarcasm out of the detective, which I think is really important. And I'll say, I think there were just a few plot holes, but nothing that I think would stand out as saying, oh, well, you know, around page 200, I wanted to burn this thing in the middle of the street. Like, for example, there was a reader who had an issue with all of the information that the detective was sharing with his dry cleaner. And I thought, okay, that's a little odd as well. Having been a cop, I realized that there were times when I shared information with others that probably would surprise some people, but it was nothing critical where a case would hinge on it. It's not like I stopped at the bar and was explaining details of an ongoing investigation. But anyway, I never even thought about that until I read one of the reviews, and I'm honestly kind of ticked off that I read the reviews, because that probably wouldn't have been in my head anyway. And here I am rambling about it. I think there were just a few pacing issues for me. Like there were moments where it honestly felt a little longer, probably, than it should have been, in my opinion. I think the book checks in somewhere around 370 something pages. So it could have been a little bit shorter. And I think had that been shorter, it could have still carried the same punch, but it wasn't so much that that's all I was focused on. I'm just hypercritical, y'all. I really don't know how else to phrase it. I can't just get on here and be like, well, this is the most perfect thing ever. Like, I got to find something, right? I really did enjoy all the twists and turns. There were some where I got to a point and I thought, well, this is entirely different direction than I was ever expecting this to go. And I love that. That's such a cool thing. I didn't find it predictable for the most part. And if you want to go into this one, taking it as a nonfiction story covering a detective and you're thinking true crime, I honestly think that you're going to be disappointed with that. I think Law and Order has ruined too many people into thinking that you can watch 5 episodes and you could process a crime scene and catch a killer in 45 minutes, which really is almost as absurd as Jake Paul's boxing career. However, if you go into it expecting twists and turns and a unique story that you haven't read before, I really think that you'll be fine. If you get to the end of this thing and you're like, whoa, that was actually pretty cool, the good news is there's another book titled Gimbals, also by Erik Fox, and turns out that's the prequel to Monarch. Both of these are available on Amazon, and I'll link them all in the show notes. Anyway, Monarch, Erik Fox. Go look the guy up. I've got all of his information on the website, haveyoureadthispodcast.com. Also, want to say this before I close this episode out. I've got some other cool reads that I will be talking about here in the near future. I got really lucky, I guess. I got 2 new arcs that were sent to me. The first was titled Underbelly by Alan Longstreet. And anytime somebody says like, hey, I think you'd like dark reads, and they send me something, I'm like, yeah, that's not dark. I don't know. Maybe I'll take that back. Alan really sent me something that was pretty profoundly dark. Underbelly was a really interesting story, another unique one, kind of like Monarch. It's something that I haven't read before. And the other arc I was sent was Concert Black by Michael O'Donnell. I had read his book, Above the Fire, which was said to be very similar to The Road, or like fans of The Road would love it. The Road is my all-time favorite novel, so I thought, well, I can't turn this down. Loved Above the Fire. He reached out to me and sent me this book that I'm reading right now. And props to him, because not only did he mention several episodes of the podcast, which meant he had to suffer through those, but he also signed the book and sent me a really cool handwritten note. And I'll tell you what, y'all, when you put thought like that into sending books, I'll be forever in this guy's corner. I think I'm only like 5 or 6 chapters into Concert Black. It's not something that I think I would have sought out, but it instantly hooked me. So that's a great thing. When my schedule clears up, the plan, and I've been saying this for darn near forever, will be to not make you suffer with my voice alone, but I'll bring somebody actually worth listening to on. Hopefully we can get Alan or Michael on the podcast to ask them a couple questions about their books and their talent. So stay tuned, or don't, whatever.